Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is Greg Horn, and really excited about our guest this week and the topic that we're going to talk about. I know most people don't like to admit it or much less talk about this topic, but it's the topic of aging. And going to have Andee Marks and her daughter Katie Hodge with us this week, and they recently spoke at a women's retreat on this topic of aging. And even though it was geared more towards women, after I was able to read through all the information that they presented, I could totally relate to all of it as a man. So don't move the dial just because you hear, oh, a women's retreat, I'm not listening to this. All of this is applicable also to us guys. So I know you're going to be blessed today as we all kind of wonder, what are people going to say about us at our funeral? And rather than waiting to the, maybe as we get in our 80s or something, if we're fortunate enough, we're going to dive in today and look at this topic and how we can leave a God-glorifying legacy behind with us. And I know that is probably the desire of most of our listeners, and if not, hopefully maybe you'll be persuaded after we get done over the next few programs. Well, Andee, let's dive on in and get started here. Is it just me, or does our culture seem to be obsessed about trying to live longer and look younger?
Greg, it's not your imagination. Our culture really is obsessed with fighting the inevitable process of aging. If you think about it, it's impossible to watch TV anymore without being bombarded with commercials about drugs that will help you live longer. And, the makeup and skincare industry, don't even get me started on that. Some of the products, are probably really helpful, but a lot of them are just plain unrealistic. They airbrush the pictures, and there are so many deceptions that are constantly used to market products that would supposedly help us combat the aging process. And of course, then there's exercise. That's become a big business too when it comes to fighting aging. We glorify 80-year-olds who successfully compete in triathlons, men and women alike. And, certainly we need to maintain our physical bodies. We need to maintain healthy bodies. But at some point, the truth is we're not going to be able to maintain the six-pack and the bulging biceps. That's just the way it is. So we need to spend, or we don't need to spend, countless dollars and hours trying to combat something that is absolutely inevitable. Youth and external beauty, they're going to fade.
Well, I can totally relate to that, as I am follically challenged. My hair disappeared many years ago. Thankfully, Michael Jordan made it cool to shave your head, so I'm thankful for that. But you're right, those things will fade. Well, one of the things that I really liked about your all's presentation was that you both come at it kind of from different aspects. Andee, you come from it as a mother, and then, of course, Katie is your adult daughter who is in her 30s. I was born at night, but not last night, so I'm not going to reveal their actual ages. So, but, Andee, why don't you share a little bit maybe about your experience with your mom and her aging?
Well, my mom passed away in September of 2016. For the majority of her life, Mom was really pretty obsessed with fighting the aging process. She invested in expensive cosmetics. Some of you who are older may remember Charles of the Ritz. Some of you ladies out there, my mom used Charles of the Ritz Revinescence religiously. She bought into the idea that it would erase the wrinkles that she had and prevent more from appearing. She continued to color her hair well into her 80s. At some point, I think in her 70s, she switched and went from a darker shade to a lighter shade. And here's a bonus for our female listeners today. I learned a long time ago from a cosmetician that if you are, as you're aging and our skin softens and gravity takes its toll and we develop fine lines and wrinkles, if you are coloring your hair a dark color, it really just accentuates that. God's design is perfect in that our hair lightens, it grays and turns white as we age to complement what's happening in our skin as well. So just a little tip, you can take it or leave it.
Little bonus information today here on Hope is Here.
But anyway, up until a couple of years before Mom broke her hip, she pushed her body really, really hard in an effort to stay fit. And she practically lived on broccoli. She was always saying, a diet rich in leafy greens was the secret to eternal youth, But none of that kept her from aging. None of it. None of that prevented her body wearing out. Or worse yet, none of it prevented the deterioration of her mind. Dealing with Mom's decline for the last 2 years of her life gave me plenty of food for thought. To be honest, none of us really wanted to be around Mom. She was angry at her circumstances, and she was really just downright mean, wasn't she, Katie?
Yes.
Dementia had really settled in with a vengeance following her surgery. She'd had some mild cognitive decline prior to that, but the anesthesia in surgery really took its toll on her. So whatever she was generally thinking just kind of came out of her mouth. And most of it was unkind, to be honest. Mom had really always kind of had a judgmental spirit, a critical spirit, but it was as though we all have this filter that the learned behavior that we learn not to say things that are unkind or cruel that might hurt somebody else's feelings. So it's a filter that we have. And one day I remember I just realized Mom's filter is gone. Dementia had stolen it away, and so there was no longer any filter that kept her from saying really hurtful things to the people who were trying to really help her. So I began to think about what it would be like if my filters were gone.
Think is a nice way of putting it. I would say she was obsessing about what would happen.
Okay. A little accountability on the Hope is Here program today. I love this. Thank you, Katie. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Katie Hodge in the audience. Yes.
It's true. It's true. I kind of went off the deep end there for a while because I didn't want to be like her. I didn't want to be critical and unkind. So I read all that I could about Alzheimer's. My mother's mother had Alzheimer's. My mother probably had Alzheimer's. As you may or may not know, it's difficult to give a diagnosis for Alzheimer's other than through an autopsy, and we didn't do that. So, but anyway, I read everything that I could about Alzheimer's, and I started doing crossword puzzles and word searches until I read that really is not helpful. And then I read that blueberries, would help ward off dementia. And to
you're
this
wiping
day,
out the shelf at Kroger every time you came in. The blueberry lady's been here.
That's right. Blueberry. My freezer was stocked full of frozen blueberries. It was ridiculous. And then, I read that a Mediterranean diet has been shown to have benefits again with warding off Alzheimer's, and so I incorporated some of those practices into our lifestyle. So instead of fighting wrinkles and sagging body parts, I began focusing on what I could do to cultivate and maintain an inner beauty that would not fade. So if dementia does strip away my filter, what's left is wisdom, godly wisdom offered with just a loving encouragement rather than a critical spirit.
I love 1 Samuel 16, chapter 16, verse 7. It says, people look on the outside, but God looks at the heart. And I think that kind of summarizes a little bit, maybe, Andee, what you're saying.
Exactly.
Katie, let me ask you, through your grandmother, your precious mom sitting across from us, and now as an adult daughter and you're 30-something, like I said, we're going to protect that. What are some things that you have found to be true in women?
Each of us has a story to tell, and it's incredibly important that we tell those stories to one another. We have the opportunity to impact each other's lives around us when we share our stories. Our lives, each of our lives, every single one of us are composed of experiences, one stacked on top of another. And when all is said and done, these experiences, they make up a life. You can't avoid that. So if you look at it from a godly lens, these experiences, the gift of life that he's given us, make up our unique story. And God is his story. It's his story, and it's interwoven through all of our decisions and our experiences, the consequences, the blessings, all the ups and downs. All of these experiences, both individually and then collectively together, is the wake that we leave.
Well, I love what you said there, Katie. One, that, just that reminder that, our lives are God's story. And unfortunately, our culture, it's about me, 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 me. Love Joyce Meyer. She says, my favorite song is me, 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 me. And, because we just bombarded with things that make it in our culture seem that it's about us. But, as you listen to Hope Is Here, maybe a reason that you're not finding peace and joy and contentment in your life is because you're so focused on your story instead of asking God, what is your will for my one and only life? Secondly, I want to say, Katie, you said the term wake. Are you talking about like going to bed at night and waking up in the morning, or could you kind of expand on what do you mean by wake?
No, it's a great question. When we started talking about, when we started fleshing out aging gracefully, we were using the term legacy, and I think it was actually in the title of our presentation, but I kept thinking about how legacy is such it's a word we use to describe when we're gone from this world. What was the legacy that we left? And I kept thinking, wow, well, we have a story now. We have a story now, and the Lord brought back to the forefront of my mind when I was working for Chick-fil-A. We did a ton of leadership training, and I remember in one particular series that we did, it began with a video of this beautiful lake. It was really quiet and really peaceful. It was a sunny day. The water was calm. And then in the corner of the screen, this small speedboat appeared. And it just started gathering speed, and it began skipping across the water. I'm sure you can imagine that. You've seen it before. And as the boat moved farther away, the water still showed signs that the boat had been there in the gentle indentions in the water that it had left behind. The boat had left a wake. And though we could no longer see the boat itself, what we did have was the evidence that it was there. And it just got me thinking that our story is existing now. And how can we create a wake as we move in and out of each other's lives? Because there are seasons of life where we're not always going to be in each other's lives. And so as we move in and out, what is the wake that we are leaving?
It's so true, Katie. We can go through life moving from just one experience to another kind of, thoughtlessly, or we can be intentional and creative with our experiences. Either way, though, we leave a wake. So the question becomes, do I want to leave a wake that glorifies the God who has given me this gift of life and who's given me these experiences, or has at least allowed, he hasn't necessarily given them all, but he's allowed them to occur. So do I want to share that story, my story, God's story through my life in such a way that others get at least a glimpse of his glory? As we talked on, we came to think about life in terms of a pilgrimage, a journey. It's a pilgrimage. One way of defining pilgrimage is a journey, especially a long one, made to some sacred place as an act of religious devotion. Well, as Christians, we are all on a journey to a sacred place. If you think about it, it's we're on a journey to our Father's house, as Jesus says in John 14, the place where Jesus has gone to prepare a place for us. So we belong to God's family. We're heirs with Christ, and we are welcome in the Father's house. So every experience of our life has the potential to make us more and more like our brother Christ, just as Paul says in Romans 8:28 and 29.
All right. Well, man, I hate to cut you off there, Andee, but lots of great information here. I hope that you're going to tune in tomorrow with us on Hope Is Here. I'm talking with Andee Marks and Katie Hodge. We're talking about aging and leaving a God-glorifying legacy with your one and only life. So we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow. So I'm Greg Horn. I hope you'll join us tomorrow for Hope Is Here.